Alright fellas, today's build is all about embracing lightning. With this arc build, you'll be able to rival Stormkeep Titans and their bolt charge spam, but on top of that, you'll also be able to almost fully maintain a damage resist percentage of 93.5. With the Rite of the Nine right around the corner, I wanted to design a build that would be able to handle higher levels of content in order to be ready for the Ultimatum mode coming with this new event. For those of you who don't know, Rite of the Nine will be a reprisal of 3 rotating dungeons: Prophecy, Spire of the Watcher, and Ghost of the Deep, all of which never had a contest mode during their release. This Ultimatum mode will act as that challenge and will come with the best rewards, including shiny versions of the original loot table with all new roles and a new origin trait. You guys are probably thinking, Wolf, why an Arc Hunter? They're so squishy. Well, you're not wrong. And to fix this, most people will automatically run to Gifted Conviction for the easy damage resist. And while that's okay, this often leads to builds that are very one-sided. You're now really great at staying alive, but you really don't have anything that helps you deal any kind of damage. You're kind of like the opposite of a glass cannon. So, my goal with this build was not only to reach those high levels of survivability, but also still have a DPS source that could compete with other supers. Now, I understand a lot of people are still very much in love with Prismatic, and I'm not here to change that. However, Hunters have some god-awful DPS supers in Prismatic outside of Nighthawk Golden Gun. Silence and Squall and Silk Strike are close, but to even get there, you need to have a specific class item role in order to do so. So here's what I did instead. I took that idea and built it out in Arc. This allowed me to keep a DPS super option with Gathering Storm, and with a little help from the artifact, we can still get really high levels of damage resist without using Gifted Conviction. Instead, we're using the base form of Star Eater Scales. This will allow you to still reach those big DPS numbers with its exotic trait, Feast of Light. You gain an additional 2% super energy from Orbs of Power, and once you have a full super, you start to gain stacks of Feast of Light. With each stack, you're increasing your super's damage. At times 6, this is a 70% damage increase. Now at the same time, we want to build into Bolt Charge to improve our DPS even more. But since we don't have a shield to hide behind, we're going to be using our aspects. And let me just say, prior to this season, most people probably wrote off Tempest Strike, but let me change your mind. This episode, it now has the ability to grant stacks of Bolt Charge by defeating jolted enemies. That jolt can be applied from any source, not just the ability itself. And it also got a 57% damage buff, which is really nice. At the same time, we're using Ascension. This now activates the effects of dodge abilities. You guys remember the old combination blow gambler's dodge loop? Yeah, this is the same idea. Ready for another crazy murder map? People had some really positive feedback about this in my last video, so as long as people continue to enjoy these, I'll add these to all of my future builds. I think visually these really help understand gameplay loops, and you can see synergy patterns much better than just listening to someone explain it. So feel free to pause here if you get confused, or try to follow along as I attempt to explain it. First, you have Ascension to jolt enemies and make you amplified. This also gives back your melee charge from Gambler's Dodge. At the same time, Combination Blow will refund your dodge to maintain this loop. You have the option to use that melee charge as a Tempest Strike Slash, which will also jolt enemies. As you're defeating arced debuff targets, you're going to proc Dielectric, adding extra stacks of Bolt Charge on top of the ones from Tempest Strike. When boosted, Dielectric will also drop Orbs of Power that give 7.5% more super energy. All of this is helping you build your super and stacks of Feast of Light. You also have a Limit Break, adding an extra 30% damage to our super when you have an element matching buff. Where are we getting that? Oh yeah, Amplified from Ascension. You also have Flashover, which will also give you Amplified once you reach a full stack of Bolt Charge. It also increases the damage of each Bolt Charge strike by 150%. Once you have fully charged your super, pick a target and watch the storm begin. Gathering Storm's initial impact also applies Jolt to anything hit by the AoE, restarting your loop. Now during this loop, you need to survive. Now here's where we tap into Strand. Unraveling Orbs will give you Unraveling Rounds. To Shreds, unfortunately, was fixed, so it's no longer buffing all of our abilities, but it still buffs all those little angry green bees, and still has all severed enemies drop those strand spots, healing us and granting us Woven Mail. Photonic Flare will make any severed or exhausted enemy you defeat with arc damage, whether that be from an arc weapon or an arc ability, release a Blinding Burst, which adds yet another arc debuff onto the field, looping right back into dielectric. Finally, you have Disruptor Spike, cutting all exhausted or severed enemy outgoing damage, further improving our damage resistance. Rinse and repeat. Let's take it a step further and add in the Fragments. Spark of Resistance adds an additional 25% of passive damage resist for just being nearby enemies. Spark of Shock allows your grenades to now apply Jolt. Which grenade should you go with? Doesn't really matter, pick your favorite. Spark of Discharge creates ionic traces from all arc weapon final blows. Traces give you 15% energy back to each one of our abilities, and will now also grant a stack of Bolt Charge. Spark of Amplitude spawns more orbs when getting kills while amplified, helping you build those stacks of Feast of Light. And finally, Spark of Frequency. This has 2 parts, but we really only care about the second half. It says while amplified, you gain increased stacks of Bolt Charge from all sources, meaning now you're going to get 2 stacks from every ionic trace you collect, from every jolted or blinded enemy you kill, and from every bolt of lightning you proc with Thunderlord. Oh, did you guys miss that on the map? Yeah, Thunderlord is the exotic weapon of choice here. Not because of its amazing DPS, but because of how easy it helps us build Bolt Charge and its intrinsic ability to disrupt. Its exotic trait is called Rain Havoc. Final blows with this weapon generate stunning lightning strikes from above. Lightning strikes grant a stack of Bolt Charge. It also has a catalyst called Return Stroke, which is basically its own unique version of rewind rounds, automatically reloading ammo back into the mag each time you proc one of these lightning strikes. But what is Disrupt? I learned a lot about this recently because up until this episode, Bungie hadn't really given us many sources of Disrupt. It falls into this weird subcategory of debuff verbs alongside things like Disorient and Exhaust. Some of these verbs can be used interchangeably, some proc others while others don't. It gets very confusing. But what you need to know for this video is that the chains of lightning from jolted enemies will apply Exhaust. Using Thunderlord just in its base form will Disrupt, which also exhausts targets, and that the reduced outgoing damage from severed targets stacks with the reduced outgoing damage from exhausted targets while Disruptor Spike is active. Let me explain. Normally, Sever will reduce an enemy's outgoing damage by 40%. That's already pretty good, but with Disruptor Spike, that is now 52%. And an exhausted enemy's outgoing damage is at base 25% reduced. With Disruptor Spike, that is increased to 35%. Using Destiny's weird multiplicative rules, that means combined, any enemy affected by both of these is now doing 68.8% less damage to you. That is not even taking into account all of the other damage resists we have stacked into this build. Amplified, Spark of Resistance, Tier 10 Resilience, Elemental Resist mods, Woven Mail. Altogether, you are looking at a 93.49% damage reduction. And it's extremely easy to maintain. Almost every enemy you come into contact with will inevitably become disrupted, exhausted, or severed in some way. There is no crazy combo or spam of any kind required. Just simply play the game and watch as different types of endgame content become more and more accessible. Granted, you still need to actually play the game. By the way, don't be this guy. You're not helping anyone. Alright, on to our other weapons. To be honest, guys, your primary slot can be any strand weapon, but more specifically, anything that can roll with the perk Slice or Tear. That way, on precision hits or using your class ability, you can sever enemies. This will keep that whole strand healing debuff chain going. Keep in mind though, Ascension procs most dodge abilities, but not all, and it does not proc Slice, so you still have to dodge normally to get it going. Bungie, if you're watching this, fix it. Let Ascension proc all dodge abilities. It just makes sense. As for your secondary, there's a lot more flexibility here. However, I found myself really loving the new sidearm Division for multiple reasons. Firstly, it rolls with both Eddy Current and Volt Shot, which is absolutely perfect for this build. But it also, being a seasonal weapon, can slot seasonal mods, like this little guy right here, Power of Ambition. Rapid hits with this weapon grant Blight rounds, dealing damage over time to targets hit by this weapon. Strong against Overload champions. And another way to say strong against Overload champions is... ding ding ding, you guessed it, Disruption. Now you have a weapon that can deal with 2 different champions, deal dot damage, jolt, and disrupt. Other exotic weapons that I found extremely useful were things like Queen Breakers. It's popping off this season and can blind with precision hits. Grand Overture can do the same thing through its Catalyst, and you even have things like Lodestar or Delicate Tomb to help you bring in more ionic traces. Needless to say, guys, there are multiple different exotics that can play a role into this build. As for your armor mods, a good combination of orb generating mods, some arc surges will help increase your arc weapon damage, and we discussed the damage resist numbers already, which included at least one damage resist mod on your chest piece. The only things to avoid here are any mods that require your dodge to proc. Ascension is still bugged and does not work with these, so things like Reaper, Bomber, Distribution, do not use these. However, what you can use is Utility Kickstart, since it activates after the class ability charge has been consumed. It doesn't care how your dodge was used, so you can double up on these to give you faster cooldowns on Ascension when needed. And that, guys, is a wrap on today's build. With this arc setup, you are ready to face the toughest challenges in the upcoming Rite of the Nine event and beyond. This build strikes the perfect balance between high DPS and strong survivability, ensuring that you can handle whatever comes your way. If I missed anything, guys, or if you have any suggestions on how to make this build even more potent, let me know down in the comments below. If you're new here, or if you haven't already, do me a huge favor and smash that subscribe button, as well as the bell next to it, so you can stay up to date with all of my latest Destiny content. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming and watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Wolf, out!